thought frontier.
Ever catch yourself wondering, like really wondering, what consciousness actually is?
Yeah,
It's like, it's more than just our brains doing their thing, right?
absolutely.
It's about like everything we experience, our feelings, who we are, the whole shebang.
It's a question that's been with us forever. What is this consciousness thing? And where does it even come from?
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Could consciousness be way bigger than we ever thought?
Buckle up, because we're about to get into some seriously mind-bending stuff.
You're not kidding. We're working with some really interesting sources today.
Right.
First up, we've got Consciousness Beyond Neural Fields.
By Virginia Dress-Blangley.
Exactly. Now, her work really made me rethink some things.
It's pretty out there.
Yeah, she basically says those classic explanations of consciousness, the whole neurons firing thing, well,
They're not wrong.
right. But they're not the whole picture either.
Like she argues, they tell us a lot about the brain,
Right.
but they don't quite grasp that feeling of actually being conscious. You know?
It's like trying to explain what chocolate tastes like by like listing out its ingredients.
Exactly. You're missing something crucial.
Totally. And that's where Dress-Blangley's idea of potential energy comes in, which is fascinating.
It's a whole different way of looking at it.
Right. So instead of our brains just making consciousness, she's saying it could be the other way around too.
Consciousness as an active force.
That's a pretty wild thought, right?
It is, and she uses examples from all sorts of places. Meditation research, expanded consciousness, really interesting stuff.
Okay, so I'll admit, when I first heard expanded consciousness, I was a little skeptical.
It does sound a bit out there.
It does. But then I read how Dress-Blangley uses studies on deep meditation, and it started to click.
Think about those times you get totally lost in something, a book, a project, whatever.
Yeah, like you completely lose track of time.
Exactly. Dress-Blangley is saying those moments, especially in deep meditation, they show us that our consciousness isn't always, limited by our usual sense of self.
Like our awareness can kind of stretch beyond its normal boundaries.
Yeah, and she suggests that by stretching, it might be tapping into something much larger, something beyond our senses.
Okay, now that's where things start to get really interesting, but we've got another perspective to bring in here.
Remember that Holberg debate? Does consciousness extend beyond brains?
Oh, yeah.
That's where these different ideas really collide.
For real. You've got Anil Seth, a neuroscientist, then Tanya Luhrmann, an anthropologist, and Rupert Sheldrake, who some call a scientific heretic.
And each one of them has this totally different take on consciousness.
It's wild.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew.
So let's start with Anil Seth. He's coming from the whole brain perspective, right?
Right. He says our brains are like prediction machines, building models of the world based on what we see and experience.
So he's saying what I'm experiencing right now, it might not even be real.
Kind of. He calls it controlled hallucination.
Well, hold on. Hallucination.
Basically, our brains are making their best guesses about the world with the information they have, and those guesses, they shape how we see things.
So, like, my brain is constantly trying to figure out what's going to happen next and make it all make sense.
Exactly. And sometimes those guesses are wrong, hence optical illusions.
Okay, that makes sense. So where does Tanya Luhrmann's work come into play?
She's an anthropologist, and she adds this whole other layer to the conversation.
I read about some of her work, like with evangelical Christians and people who practice tulpamancy.
Right. Creating those imaginary companions.
Yeah, and they feel so real to those people.
And Luhrmann found that believing, like really believing and doing these rituals, it can actually change the brain.
You're saying our beliefs can change how we experience things.
That's what her research suggests, yeah. The line between what's inside and outside, it's not as clear as we think.
Which leads us to Rupert Sheldrake.
The one who really shakes things up.
Right. He takes this idea of consciousness beyond the brain to a whole new level.
He's talking about telepathy, the feeling of being watched.
Even the idea that the sun could have consciousness.
He's not afraid to go there.
But didn't Anil Seth disagree with that during the debate?
He did. He said, it's interesting, but we don't have the proof yet.
So it's like pushing the limits of science versus sticking to what we know for sure.
Exactly. And that's the heart of this whole discussion about consciousness.
Yeah.
How far are we willing to go?
It's like we're looking out at this massive unknown, and each of these perspectives is a different map. It's pretty mind-blowing to think about all these different ideas together. Like,
right.
on the one side, you've got Seth talking about the brain and how we build our own reality.
Hmm.
And then Lerman's showing us how much our beliefs can shape that reality.
Yeah.
And then Sheldrake comes in and just explodes the whole thing wide
It
open.
really makes you wonder, what don't we know yet?
Totally. And for me, that's the most exciting part. It makes you question everything. Like, if my consciousness isn't just stuck in my head.
What does that mean for you?
Exactly. Could I be connected to, like, other people's minds? To the whole world, even, in ways we don't understand yet.
Now you're getting into some ancient questions there.
Right. Like, philosophers have been wrestling with this stuff forever.
And maybe science doesn't have all the answers, but at least we're asking the right questions now.
And some of those questions, they're real doozies. Like Sheldrake in the debate, he asked, if we created artificial consciousness, would it believe in God?
Whoa.
I know, right?
Imagine a machine that's so advanced it starts asking those big questions.
Could a machine have a spiritual experience? I mean, if consciousness can exist outside the brain, why not?
It makes you rethink what alive even means.
For real. Would knowing that change how we treat AI? Would we see them as, like, sacred or something?
These are huge questions about consciousness, about free will.
About what it means to be human. Even
Yeah.
this deep dive, I'm telling you, it's changed how I think about consciousness. It's not just this thing locked away in our heads.
It's bigger than us.
Way bigger, maybe even part of the universe itself. And who knows, maybe we're all connected through it somehow.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But hey, at least we're on this journey together, right?
Yeah, that's what matters.
So to everyone listening, next time you're lost in thought or looking up at the stars or just feeling that connection with someone, take a second to think about your own consciousness. It's a whole universe inside each of us just waiting to be explored.